Hi guys, don't forget we're in the Xbox section today. And if you still have space up on the top, we have 2 more examples for the top. So if you still have space on the top, let's do 2 more examples up here. If not, you can start working on the bottom, but make sure that you leave a lot of space because our Monday and I think our Tuesday notes both are on the bottom. So try to leave space for that. We're continuing from our first video, and in our first video we did 2 examples. So this video we're going to start with example 3. All right, so here I have a trinomial. So, when you're looking at your book, you can look at this side. This is for everything. This is for 4 terms. This is for 3 terms. So I want to use 3 terms. So we're in the Xbox section. And in our first video, we learned that we start by drawing an X. And then we do our first number, which is 1, times our last number. And we put that on top. So I have a negative 12 on top. And then for my middle term, 6, that goes on the bottom. So now I need to think of 2 numbers that multiply to make negative 12. So 1 positive, 1 negative. And then if it's 1 positive, 1 negative, we got to subtract to 6. So 2 numbers that multiply to 12 and subtract to 6. I don't know, guys. 2 and 6 is not going to subtract to 6. 3 and 4 is not going to subtract to 6. I don't know. I'm at a loss. So if you can't think of it straight off the top of your head, we did learn in our first video on Monday that we could make a list of all the numbers that multiply to 12 and try to see okay, which ones work. And when we're making our list, we like to always start with 1 in the number because we have a tendency to forget that. Maybe that's the one that's going to work. But we're subtracting, and 12 minus 1 is not 6. 12 minus 1 is 11. So that's no good. And then my next set of numbers was 2 and 6, and 6 minus 2 is 4. That's no good. And then my next one is 3 and 4, but 4 minus 3 is 1. That's no good. And now, guys, I ran out of numbers. There's no more numbers. I've tried every possibility. Every pair of numbers that multiplies to 12, none of them subtract to 6. If something can't be factored, then it's prime. So we talked about prime on the very first day of notes, and we said, prime is something that can't be factored. Its only factors are 1 in itself. And so that's this. We can't create a multiplication problem out of this trinomial. It's not factorable. So then your final answer that you would write down is the word prime. So go ahead and write down prime for this one. And then we have one more example for today. Example number 4. In this example, it gets a little bit different because it's got an extra variable in there, but everything's going to work out okay. So I'm going to draw my X, and in the X, since it's already a letter, we're not going to put any letters in it. We're just focusing on the numbers. So I'm going to do the first number, which is 1, times the last number, which is 48. I'm just putting the 48 up here, no letters. On the bottom, I put the middle number, which is negative 16. So now I need 2 numbers that multiply to 48 and add to negative 16. Since the bottom number is negative, both of my side numbers are going to be negative. Take your time to try to figure out what those 2 numbers are. If you can't figure it out off the top of your head, go ahead and make that list. Sometimes we can figure it out super duper fast, but sometimes we can't. So the list can help. So we can start with 1 and 48, but 1 plus 48 is 49. Super not 16. Next is 2 and 24, and 2 plus 24 is 26. So we're getting closer, right? We were at 49, now we're at 26. The next number that divides evenly into 48 is 3, but 3 and 16 is not 16, right? Because that's already got a 16 in it. And the next number is 4 and 12, and we've got it. 4 plus 12 is 16. We make them both negative, so it's a negative 16. And it doesn't matter which side you write them on. Now that I've figured out the sides of the X, now I can do my box. The first term, so now we are concerned with our variables. The first term, x squared, goes in the first box. The entire last term, 48y squared, goes in the last box. And remember on the diagonal, we're taking the middle term and we're splitting it. Okay, so the middle term was a negative 16xy. We're going to split it into a negative 12xy and a negative 4xy. Remember, on the diagonal, these two things should be like terms that you can combine together. Right. So now we're going to factor out GCFs. So for my top two boxes, the only thing they have in common is the letter x. X times x is x squared. Now here, I only have an x, so I need these other two things. So x times negative 12y is negative 12xy. So now we have a variable over here as well, and that's okay. It's okay to have a variable over here, especially when we have a variable in this last box. Same thing happens down here. So I have an x up here, so I'll need a negative 4y over here. And then we double check really quickly, right? Negative 4 times negative 12 is positive 48, and y times y is y squared. So we did good. All right, guys, I have two for you to try on your own. Don't do these. No, not in the book. We don't have space for them in the book, but I do want you to try a couple before I release you off to do your homework for today. We have one that's just like the example we just did, and then the second one is kind of a throwback to yesterday's video. So this one has a rectangle, and I gave you the area, and I want to know the length and the width. So it's just factoring, and just write my two parentheses. So pause the video and try these. All right, I hope you got a plus 6b and a minus 3b for that first one. Notice that we have the b's at the end of the parentheses, just like we have the b squared at the end of the problem. And the a's are at the beginning, just like we have an a squared at the beginning. For the word problem, we're not going to necessarily write it the same way because it's asking what are the dimensions. So we want a length and then we want a width. So you can put a comma in between them, or yesterday we did x plus 9 and we wrote the word by, and then we did x plus 6. That would also be fine. This concludes our first day of Xbox. We have 2 more days of Xbox. Xbox is like the most commonly used factoring. So Monday and Tuesday of next week, I'll post a couple more videos, and I'll see you then.